Hello everybody. In last lecture, I talked about the digestive system or gastrointestinal system. We talked about different parts of this system. We also talked about the structures and functions of the digestive system. So today, we'll talk about the diseases of this system, the clinical conditions, and the causes. So first, let's talk about the stomach. You know that this is the stomach, and I already mentioned in last lecture that uh, hydrochloric acid is secreted from the gastric gland. So when hydrochloric acid is secreted, if your stomach has food inside it, that hydrochloric acid helps to digest the food, break the food. Now, if your stomach is empty and hydrochloric acid is secreted in excessive amount, excess secretion of that hydrochloric acid in the stomach can cause uh, inflammation in the wall of the stomach, and that is called gastritis. So you'll see when gastritis occurs, the color of the mucosa or inner surface of the stomach uh, will become red. So redness of the color that indicates the gastritis, inflammation of the mucosa or inner lining of the stomach. Now, prolonged gastritis can lead to ulcer, injury in the deeper uh, layers of the stomach. And sometimes, if you don't treat that gastritis or gastric ulcer, then what can happen? A hole or perforation can also uh, be created. So that is a terminal stage of gastritis. Now, there are other uh, causes of gastritis and gastric or peptic ulcer. A bacteria, a germ that is called Helicobacter pylori. That is called Helicobacter pylori. This Helicobacter pylori, if it stays inside your GI tract for years, that slowly causes lesion in the wall of the stomach. It can also happen in the intestine. So Helicobacter pylori is another cause of gastric or peptic ulcer, and smoking can also, chronic smoking can lead to gastric ulcer or gastritis. So all those are primary causes of gastritis or gastric ulcer. Sometimes a Helicobacter pylori induced gastric ulcer can turn to cancer uh, and stomach cancer, and that is a more serious situation or condition. Uh, if the ulcer is formed in the duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestine, this is called duodenal ulcer. Another clinical condition of the stomach is called herniated hiatal hernia. Hiatal hernia is a condition in which a part of the stomach uh, enters into the thoracic cavity. This is the diaphragm. Diaphragm is a muscle like here. This is the diaphragm, and what happens, the esophagus that enters into the stomach like this. So this is esophagus and this is the stomach. Okay, so what happens, and this is small intestine. So here is the diaphragm, and esophagus pierces through the diaphragm, and this is thoracic cavity, and this is abdominal cavity, right? And diaphragm is here. Okay, diaphragm, this muscle. And what can happen if this opening gets wider, a part of the stomach can pop out. A small part of the stomach can enter into the thoracic cavity through that opening, and this opening is called hiatus. Esophageal hiatus. So when the stomach, part of stomach, enters into the thoracic cavity through that hiatus or opening, that is called hiatal hernia. Hiatal hernia. Okay, so this is hiatal hernia, you see, and you can see here in this picture, this part of the stomach has entered into the thoracic cavity. So this is a hiatal hernia. You remember a worm-like or finger-like, small finger-like structure that is attached to the cecum. So this is the cecum, first part of the large intestine, right? So cecum is the first part of the large intestine, and this is the uh, appendix or vermiform appendix, and this appendix got inflamed. You see redness and swelling. So when inflammation occurs in the appendix, that is called appendicitis. Itis is inflammation, so appendicitis. Uh, the problem of appendicitis is that uh, it can eventually, if you don't remove it, or if you don't you know dissect it surgically and remove it, it can eventually burst, and the toxic food stuff and other toxic materials present inside the large intestine will get out into the peritoneal cavity. Okay, and when that happens, like if it ruptures or bursts, then the toxic materials from the large intestine will get out and spread all over in the peritoneal cavity or abdominal cavity, okay, and will infect other organs. So that is the most dangerous condition of appendicitis. So before it bursts, you need to surgically remove it. Colitis is the inflammation of the colon. So this is inside the colon, or large intestine. So you see here redness, that means inflammation, has occurred in the inner lining of the colon. So that is the colitis. Okay. Now, if you don't treat the inflammation, then eventually you may get ulcer in that area. And when ulcer, you see the white patches, ulcer occurs, that is called ulcerative colitis. Okay, ulcerative colitis. So it is like inside the stomach, if inflammation occurs, that is called gastritis, and gastric ulcer if ulcer is formed, and similar way if inside the colon, colitis and ulcerative colitis. This is an interesting clinical condition, and it is also a serious clinical condition. You see, this is the small intestine, you remember, and what has happened here, twisting of the tube or small intestine, uh, and that has blocked the passage of the food stuff. So uh, you see the food stuff has accumulated here. It cannot pass through this area because of the twisting uh, of the intestine, and this condition is called volvulus. Okay, so if you don't surgically, dissect and attach these parts again and remove this part, then it can cause the rupture, infection and rupture, and that can cause even sepsis, coma, and shock and death. Another clinical condition of the large intestine or colon, here you see if the wall at different locations of the large intestine gets weak. So what can happen if the wall gets weak due to pressure from inside, tiny pouches can be formed, and you can see here this is inside the colon, and because of the weakness of the wall, part has been popped out, and that is called diverticula. Diverticulum is singular. If I indicate only one, diverticulum. If I indicate, usually it happens many of these, diverticulum you see occur at the same time. So diverticula is plural. So more than one, we say diverticula. If we indicate only one, that is diverticulum. And the process is called diverticulosis. What happens, the fecal material would enter into this area, okay, and will eventually infect the diverticulum. And if the diverticulum is infected, that condition is called diverticulosis. Okay, inflammation or infection. So if infection occurs, that is called diverticulosis, and if only the pouches are formed, not yet infected, diverticula or diverticulum. So that is another clinical condition. hemorrhoids occur in the anus and anal canal. So this is the anal canal, this area, this is rectum, and you see that small, structures filled with blood. So those pouches are formed from the wall of the anal canal, and these get filled with the blood. Okay, so that is called hemorrhoid. So hemorrhoids are here, you see. If it happens in the outer part, in the anus, that is called the external hemorrhoid. If it is inside the anal canal, that is the internal. Okay, so external and internal. Now this is one way you can treat and remove the hemorrhoids, and that is called hemorrhoidal banding. You can just use syringe and a cutter like uh, end here, so you can just you can either burn it or just uh, take the hemorrhoid inside this tube like a structure. It's like a a forceps like thing. So this is the end of that syringe. This is the syringe, and what you do, uh, this is the hemorrhoid filled with blood, right? This is the wall of the anal canal. So you just suck it and move the the end of that forceps like structure and just cut here, okay, and take it inside. So this is one way you treat. Sometimes you put band, rubber band kind thing here at the root of the hemorrhoid and tie, and if you keep it for a while, what will happen, this will get detached, so that is another effective way to remove these hemorrhoids. Okay, you can cut it or tie with band like rubber band like thing, and that will eventually detach this one from the wall. Diarrhea is commonly heard clinical condition of the large intestine. Okay, in last class I mentioned that the main functions of the large intestine is absorption of water and electrolytes. So water is absorbed, right? Water and electrolytes are absorbed uh, in the large intestine. Uh, so uh, in the large intestine, not in small. In a small intestine, mostly the nutrients are absorbed. In large intestine, mostly water and electrolytes are absorbed. So if inflammation uh, or infection occurs in the large intestine, then what will happen? Water will not be able to absorbed or taken into back into the body. So water will remain inside the large intestine, right? So water will remain. Water remains because the wall is infected. So absorption will not occur. This is the large intestine, and you have a lot of water with the food stuff in the large intestine. Normally what happens, water is taken back into the body through the wall. Body means into the blood. But if inflammation occurs in the wall here, then water cannot be taken back into the body. Water will remain inside the large intestine and eventually get out with the feces, and that is called diarrhea. a lot of water gets out with the feces. So infection of the large intestine, right? Intestine causes diarrhea, in which the water cannot be absorbed or taken back into the blood or body, will get out with the feces. So that is the diarrhea. And uh, also not only the reabsorption is prevented, if for inflammation or infection occurs in the large intestine, the motility of large intestine also can increase. So increase movement or motility of large intestine. If the movement increases in the large intestine, what will happen? The movement of the intestine, wall of the intestine, uh, moves the food stuff right downwards. So by the contraction of the wall, food stuff moves downwards. Now if movement or contraction increases, then what will happen? Food will pass too fast. So the intestine will not get enough time to reabsorb enough water, take enough water back. If it goes slowly, it gets more time to take the water back more. It gets more time. Now if contraction increases, motility increases in the large intestine, the food stuff will pass too fast and will get out from the body. So two things here, due to decreased absorption of water, that will increase the water amount here, and increase motility will move the stuff too fast. So a lot of water will get out with the feces. So that is diarrhea. Constipation is just opposite of diarrhea, right? So it is uh, opposite of diarrhea. What happens in constipation, the movement of the large intestine is slower than normal. So if the movement is slow motility, then what will happen? The food stuff will stay there for longer time, right? So large intestine will get a lot of time to reabsorb or absorb the water back into the body. So more water will get back into the body because of the slow movement. Food stuff will with water will remain there for long time. So large intestine will get more time to take the water back. So more water will be absorbed from the food stuff here. So the food stuff will get what? Harder. Hardening of the food stuff, and that is called constipation, right? You know that hardening of the food stuff, that is constipation. So those are two commonly heard clinical conditions of the large intestine. Okay, so now we will talk about uh, the accessory organs of the digestive system, and these organs are located outside of the GI tract, or that long tube from the mouth to the anus. So what are these accessory organs of the digestive system? Your gallbladder, liver, pancreas, salivary glands. Uh, Gallbladder, I already mentioned, is located just under the liver. So if this is the liver, your gallbladder is located here. And you see from gallbladder, the bile duct arises, and this is your duodenum. So liver produces bile, or secretes bile. You can also say secrete bile into the gallbladder. So gallbladder stores bile. Okay, and make the bile concentrated. Okay, also concentrate the bile. And when you eat fat-rich food, your gallbladder will eject the bile into the intestine, into the duodenum. Okay, and that bile will help to break the large fat particles. So the function of the bile is fat breakdown or fat digestion. You know, breakdown is the digestion, so fat digestion. Okay, so that is the function of the gallbladder. Okay, now sometimes stones are formed either inside the gallbladder because bile is highly concentrated and calcium and some other uh, minerals, bile salts, are present in the bile and they can form stones. Okay, and that will cause pain, sharp pain in the right side of the abdomen where your gallbladder is. And if you cannot treat by medicine, you have to remove the bile, remove the gallbladder. Surgically, you need to remove the gallbladder. Okay. Now, if you do that, then what will be the problem? Just think that. You know that the bile helps in fat digestion, right? So if uh, your gallbladder is removed surgically, then your fat digestion will not occur adequately. Okay, so that is a problem of removal of the gallbladder, which is clinically called cholecystectomy. Let me write down here. Cholecystectomy. Surgical removal of gallbladder. Okay. Uh, liver. Liver is the largest gland of the body. And nutrients I mentioned in last class from the intestine are first taken into the liver, and first processing of the nutrients take place in the gallbladder. Okay. Nutrients. Okay. Liver has many other important functions, uh, but this one is mainly related to the digestive function and production and secretion of bile that I mentioned earlier. So these are two important functions of the liver. Those are related to the digestive function, but liver has many other very important functions. Okay. Pancreas. Pancreas is an organ which looks like this and horizontally placed in the abdominal cavity, and this is the head part, and this is the body, and this is the tail of the pancreas. Anyway, so pancreas produces I mentioned in last class digestive juice, and that is also called pancreatic juice. Makes sense, right? And pancreatic juice is very important. Why? Because inside the pancreatic juice you have all three types of digestive enzymes. You have amylase for carbohydrate digestion, you have protease for protein digestion, and you have lipase for lipid or fat digestion. So pancreatic juice is very important because it has all types of digestive enzymes. And inside the pancreas you have a tube-like structure that is called the pancreatic duct, and this pancreatic duct uh, goes to the small intestine. So pancreas secretes the pancreatic juice inside the duct, and that tube or duct takes it into the small intestine, and the foodstuffs are here. So that pancreatic juice will help in digestion of all three types of food: proteins, carbohydrates, fats. Okay, so this is the pancreatic duct. Salivary glands, three sets of salivary glands I mentioned in last class. The largest ones are parotid. Then under the tongue you have sublingual, lingual means tongue, and under the mandible you have submandibular. So those are three sets of salivary glands secrete saliva. I mentioned the functions of saliva in last class. Okay, so those are the important accessory organs of the digestive system. You need to know their functions. Okay, thank you very much.